I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
I'm DJ Trump, and I'm like a really smart person. I'm very intelligent, vote for me for president. I know words, I have the best words. You know I'm very rich, I'm not a politician. We're gonna build a wall, illegal alien prohibition. We're gonna win so much, you're gonna be amazed. Took a bullet to the ear, and I wasn't even phased. Lady, you're fired, you're out, I'm hired. Make America great again, again. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters. I know more about ISIS than the generals do. Trump flags for homes, for cars, and for all those voters. Fake news is the enemy of the people. The system is rigged, fake news tricks the sheeple. I have a very good brain and I've said a lot of things, own the best hotels and rock the boxing ring. We're gonna win so much, you're gonna be amazed. Took a bullet to the ear, and I wasn't even phased. Lady, you're fired, you're out, I'm hired. Make America great again, again.
I'm not a threat to democracy at all. They are a threat to democracy. I'm the one that fixed our military. I'm the one that knocked out ISIS. I'm the one. I did so much. I also took a bullet.
Fake news is the enemy of the people. The system is rigged, fake news tricks the sheeple. I have a very good brain and I've said a lot of things, on the best hotels and rock the boxing ring. We're gonna win so much, you're gonna be amazed. Took a bullet to the ear, and I wasn't even phased. Lady, you're fired, you're out, I'm hired. Make America great again, again.
From today and from the day I take the oath of office, we will rapidly drive prices down and make America affordable again. We're going to make it affordable again.
Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to a special edition of Sunny Side, the sunny side of life this week, the day after the 2024 election. We didn't do a show on Monday because we wanted to see what would happen on Tuesday, yesterday. And this is coming out even later because, well, we don't have all of the results in, but we've got enough of them to know that Donald Trump is going to be the president of the United States once again. He'll be the 45th and the 47th president, the first president since Grover Cleveland to achieve that split in presidential statuses and or stati. I don't know what to say. Way back to Grover Cleveland, he was a Democrat. And also a big guy. So there you go. It has been a long time since a president has lost and then run again, lost, and then, run again and won. And that is what happened last night. Late last night. We stayed up a little bit late watching the returns, like probably a lot of people did, to find out exactly what it was going to turn out to look like. And it looks like it's going to be a Republican in the White House, and it's going to be a Republican Senate, and well, we're still waiting to see if it's going to be a Republican House or not. Currently, as I record this, the House is being held by the Republicans, but they've got quite a ways to go to get to 218. I believe that they're at 202 now or something like that as I record this. So there's some contests that are hotly contested out there, one of which is still in Iowa, actually in the 1st district. That would be with the incumbent, which is the Republican, Marionette Miller Meeks. She is leading with 98% reporting her opponent, the Democrat Christina Bohannon, but only by like 800 votes. So very close. And actually, that's how it was the last time this went. If you recall, Nancy Pelosi didn't even really want to certify her election the last time. And so it seems like we could be in for another few days or maybe a week of sorting out some of these congressional races. It looks like the Senate does now belong to the Republicans. They flipped a couple of seats, and there are still a few out there. So what will it end up to be? Not sure, but the majority appears that the Senate will belong to the Republicans, and the House may belong to the Republicans and remain in their hands and control. And then the White House now transfers to the Republican Party under Donald Trump in January. But at this point, I haven't seen a concession speech from Vice President Harris. I haven't heard anything from President Joe Biden, and I haven't really, and that's fine. I just, at some point, I was like, well, we're going to do a show on Wednesday. I thought I would be doing it right away in the morning. Silly me. I should have been, I could even wait a little bit longer to see how this actually goes. But I guess the good news for all of this is that I think it is good that Donald Trump won. I know that there are a lot of people who don't think that that's a good thing. In fact, I don't think that this is a landslide victory, even though if we look right now at as I record this anyway, the Electoral College is 224 for Kamala Harris and 292 for Donald Trump, and that is still leaving some results to come in from Nevada and Arizona, Alaska, and Maine. Maine is leaning towards Harris, and Arizona, Nevada, and Alaska are leaning towards Trump. We'll see how it shakes out, but at this point, 270 certainly belong to Donald Trump, so he's going to be the president of the United States again. And what does that mean? That's what we're going to talk about today. It's not going to be a tremendously long episode. I think I'm not a very good news or person. I've said it before, you shouldn't be getting your news from me. My commentary is, what it is. Take it for what it's worth, whatever that might be. And I'm trying to put it all together in my head too, because if you recall back in January, I wasn't real keen on Donald Trump, and I thought that Doug Burgum would be a great presidential candidate. But I could be wrong. I think Doug Burgum could have beat Kamala Harris. I think just about anybody could have beaten Kamala Harris. It turns out that she's just wasn't a very good candidate, and neither was Hillary Clinton. It has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with their ability to communicate ideas and actually Hillary was better at this than Kamala was. I mean, just terrible at communicating any common sense ideas that people can say, yeah, let's do that. Other than the fact of being outraged that Trump is still alive, and it irritates some people so much that they couldn't possibly stand to vote for Donald Trump, regardless of what his policies were from 2016 to 2020. And those policies worked out pretty well. We had a fairly robust and strong situation in our domestic policy, our foreign policy, our economic policy, our energy policy. I expect those things will get even better. That's why I voted for Donald Trump. I was interested in RFK Jr. I know he was a little nutty, but I think I even said that, yeah, I would, if it came down to RFK and Donald Trump head to head, I would have voted for RFK Jr. Didn't have to do that because RFK was completely pushed out by the Democratic Party. He ran independent, and then he dropped out of the race and then lent his support, as you well know, to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump picked up other heroes of the modern era, people like Elon Musk, who purchased Twitter and probably saved social media. It was a terrible business deal, but at the end of the day, it forces guys like Mark Zuckerberg to start being more libertarian in their designs of how they're running their social media platforms, and so on and so forth. That's a good thing. How YouTube and Google are operating things may not be that great. It might be that they are trying to suppress information. It's scary that that our government has back doors into these social media platforms and through Silicon Valley. And what you've seen in the last year during this election cycle is many of the CEOs of the Silicon Valley stripe step away from the Democrats and their desire to suppress information. They are slowly pulling away. And that includes Jeffrey Bezos, right? The founder of Amazon, the current owner of the Washington Post, saying we're not going to endorse make an endorsement for president. And they most certainly would have gone with Harris. Would that have mattered? And I think what Bezos recognizes as a businessman, despite his politics, is that we don't care what your opinion is. You are a journalist. And journalists right now, the media industry, the old standard, the newspapers, the magazines, there's hardly any actual news magazines out there that are worth anything. They're the newspaper. Who's reading newspapers? Who's watching the local news? Who's watching the major networks? Old people, because that's what they were used to. They were trained by Walter Cronkite that that's what you have to do. I don't watch cable news. I know it's corrupt, and it doesn't matter if it's CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or you name it. They're all corrupt. They are presenting one side of the story as they report the news because they know that's what you want to hear. And if you keep watching, that's what's going to happen when they can sell that and make their money. Speaking of money, this was the most expensive campaign in history. We're talking about over $4 billion total that has been $4 billion with a B. $3.5 billion is what they spent together, Harris and Trump. They raised together, obviously not as a team, $4.2 billion, and they did that with their outside groups, super PACs, the DNC, the RNC, affiliated fundraising vehicles of all sorts. And according to Financial Times, Trump groups and the Republican committee took in just over $1.8 billion, and they spent $1.6 billion. And the Harris campaign, with the help of the DNC, took in $2.3 billion, spending $1.9 billion. That's astounding. Harris spent nearly $2 billion in advertising. That's most of the money. The bulk of it goes to the media and advertising. Right? It goes. They're paying somebody to put it on their platform. And I remember working in radio and how excited the owners of the station were when it came time for elections, particularly in Iowa, because we have the first in the nation caucuses. And so there would be lots of money coming in from all over the place for the Hawkeye cockeye. And that was exciting. It was making the people that owned those platforms, in my case, that was radio. I wasn't one of, I'm not an owner. I worked at a radio station, so I didn't get any of that money aside from what I normally got paid. Nobody was making endorsements on the radio. You had to do equal time. If you had a candidate on, then the other candidate would have to be on as well for that same amount of time. That's what NBC discovered this past weekend when they had Harris on Saturday Night Live, whoever watches that, and then they had to give time to Donald Trump, and so they gave him 90 seconds of advertising following the Sunday Night Football, which actually was a way bigger audience. So for less money, once again, if you want proof that at least fiscally it seems that Republicans can do more with less, certainly you can look towards the Trump campaign and say in both elections, back in 2016, he spent less than $1 billion, and Hillary Clinton spent like $1.5 billion. She didn't get elected, if you remember. Although if you ask her, she might say she should have. Everybody seems to forget that she was an election denier back in 2016. Kamala Harris spent $2 billion, nearly $2 billion, $100 million short of $2 billion, which it's just astounding. And Trump spent, 1.6 billion. So he spent a lot of money too, but about $300 million less to get elected. Doesn't that seem a little bit crazy? So does it make you wonder why the media has absolutely no authority whatsoever? Because they're just in it for the money. They love spinning all of us up into this crazy, vitriolic, just rock fights with one another on a daily basis, so that they can continue to stir things up and collect the money. That's all it's about. You shouldn't watch the news, and I'm not saying that you should be ignorant of what is happening. One of the best things that has happened because of social media, particularly since Elon Musk did purchase Twitter, changed the name to X for some reason. He apparently likes that letter. And in that situation, we have seen now an explosion of other ways to get your information. And the media hates that. They hate it because they believe, mistakenly, but they honestly, in their heart of hearts, believe that the reason that they went to Columbia to get that ridiculous journalism degree, which any gumshoe back in 1919 could do with a high school diploma and do better, they believe that they are the gatekeepers of information, and everything must run through them. And if it doesn't go through them, then it can't be true. It can't be, and maybe it isn't true. But to the concept that these muckrakers in the media are any different than the muckrakers for all time, it's always been that way. They're just mad because they don't have the monopoly anymore. So thank God for that, because as we head into these next 4 years and probably for the rest of our lives, we are going to need to adapt to a new way of receiving information through the media. One of the smartest things that they did at Twitter, I know I keep calling it Twitter because X just sounds weird to me, but they have added the community notes. So instead of lots of clips being twisted and columns and statements and things like that being twisted around as misinformation to mislead people, the community notes can go right in there, and you can actually see the document or see the entire video so that you can make that judgment yourself. Long form media with guys like Joe Rogan and this show. We're on the same part. I realize that. And the fact that he sat down with almost 3 hours with Donald Trump, and Trump had somewhere else to be, but he stayed on and had that conversation. Look, we all know that Trump likes to talk, but what was astounding is that Harris didn't. She wouldn't sit down and have a normal human conversation with a guy like Rogan, who was a Bernie Sanders supporter. So you would think that there was an opportunity there. But she made a huge mistake by not doing that. She went on other shows. I would never watch some, porn stars or whatever that. I don't even know what that person's claim to fame is. I have no fame, so it's irrelevant to me. She went on some podcast. I can't even think of what it's called right now. But I don't care. And they throw softball questions. They didn't really get into any conversation, and it was just sad. Like, you're supposed to be able to communicate with the people out there, and what I expect now is I expect to be able to hear you in a conversation that goes on for a couple of hours. That's how we get to know each other. That's how people get to know one another and become friends or enemies, I suppose. They sit down, they have conversations over a period of time, not little sound bites that seem to fit in between the tiny little news segments that they've got running, because that's the old way that they've always done it since television news became a thing. And I don't need the constant 24-hour news cycle, because they don't say anything useful either. You can condense that truly into, probably an hour or two in a day. We don't need that. So don't watch the news over and over every day. Turn that stuff off. It's not going to get any better, by the way. The journalists in the media haven't done their job, with the possible exception of Peter Doocy at the White House for Fox News. Nobody's asked any questions about whether Joe Biden is actually in good shape. He's clearly not. The whole process how the Democrats handled this thing since the Democratic convention. They ousted the sitting president of the United States. They slid in Harris so that they could keep the $100 million or whatever she brought with her, so that they could use that and hopefully prop her up enough and keep her out of the cameras, which they did try to do quite regularly. She wasn't even normal enough to appear in the Catholic fundraiser down in New York at the roast, right? Trump shows up and he had a great time. That's his venue. She's not normal because she can't do that. She did some weird skit. And I heard Ben Shapiro say that Molly Shannon isn't funny. I think Molly Shannon is very funny. It's just that in that particular situation, you just can't make it funny because Kamala's not funny. And so she's missing certain human qualities, and people saw that. This isn't a referendum on necessarily Joe Biden or his failed policies, because if you look at the numbers across the country, it was still pretty close, within a few points, with the exceptions of Alabama, and places like that where there 20-point spreads or 30-point spreads for Trump. And California, even that wasn't as an enormous of a spread between Harris and Trump as you might think of. New York wasn't that big of a spread either. In fact, let me look this up because I did find that particularly interesting. Isn't it weird that in New York, the votes were 4.3 million for Harris and 3.4 million for Trump, so about 900,000 short. That's a lot, but there's 10 million people that live in New York. 7 million, almost 8 million people voted in New York, and it was 55-44. But in Pennsylvania, it was very close. And in Virginia, where a lot of people that work in Washington, D.C., who have been living off of the teat of the government for so long, 2.27 million for Harris and 2 million and some change for Trump. So about 225,000 more people. They probably all work at in the federal government somewhere. Good Lord. New Mexico, there's not even 1 million people that vote in New Mexico, but they went for Harris. However, the spread was only about 50,000 votes. Colorado, I've given up on you, Colorado. You're a big square state and lots of beautiful mountains. I don't ski, and I don't smoke weed, so I don't care. You have gone off the deep end. You went for Harris, nearly 1.4 million, 1,399,380, to Trump's 1.1 million. So, 290,000 fewer votes for Trump, and they decided to. But that's what people do in California. It was 57-40. So there's a 17% spread between those candidates there, and of course up the left coast you've got Oregon and Washington all going for Harris. In fact, the states that went for Harris are Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Colorado, New Mexico. The state to our north, Minnesota, but not by much, by 140,000 votes, and they probably are all right there in Minneapolis. That's where they come from, and a little bit up there in Duluth, where they still love the unions. And then Illinois went for Harris, and by about 500,000 votes over there. And they, that's it's weird to me that these Midwestern states, who are primarily rural, like Illinois and Minnesota, with the exception of Chicago and the Twin Cities, they are very rural. If you look at, and then you've got the Northeast. So the Southeast, all red, all went for Trump, all up the middle, the Dakotas, the Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, it looks like Nevada and Arizona and Alaska. All of those big rural states vote for Donald Trump. And that's part of the issue now with the folks that are apparently smarter than all of us, because I don't know why. I guess they live in New York and they're in the TV news business, and particularly on MSNBC. They can't believe how stupid we all are. And truly, they do believe we are ignorant, just trash files. Like we're not capable of making educated decisions. But let me ask you about the educated decisions, the educated white women that were going to make this election so powerful for Harris. It didn't happen because women have agency and they can vote for things that are outside of their womb. Like they can vote for things like business, finance, understanding that inflation is hard. Maybe there is an immigration problem. Maybe they are concerned. Maybe they have the audacity to remember how things were just 4 short years ago, which was not that, well, actually 2020 was not a great year, was it? We had all kinds of things, killer hornets and dancing or square dancing hurricanes and COVID amongst all of the other things. But they remember the Trump economy, which was very good. And speaking of which, I couldn't help but look at when the stock exchange opened this morning, and it just immediately jumped a couple of 1,500 points from the opening bell. And just overnight, I've looked at our portfolios, and it's tremendous. The amount of, it's just, people feel better about having Donald Trump in the White House than Joe Biden or Vice President Harris. That's what it ended up being. People, in my opinion, I didn't talk to a lot of people. I realize I live in my own bubble, but I look at it and people are sick and tired of hearing about they're just sick and tired about pushing things like the LGBTQI plus agenda. They're sick of it. They're sick of hearing about transgender issues, and particularly kids. They're sick of hearing about the situation where men can play in women's sports. They don't like that. They don't like the fact that we're not doing anything at the border, and they're not stupid. They realize that it isn't just because Trump maybe made a phone call and then the Congress didn't do anything, so they couldn't get more judges to process more people. You could have closed the border, but the first thing that they did, the Biden-Harris administration, when they came in, is they reversed most of Trump's policies out of spite and ignorance. And a lot of the things that we're supposed to believe that only educated white women understand is those issues. And if you start I have said this before, but what a sick and twisted platform to base your entire campaign on, an infanticide. What a terrible idea. Look, I don't think that America is a Christian country. I think that there are Christian roots. I think there are Christian grandparents and great-grandparents. I think there were Christian pioneers. But I wouldn't look at today's modern and contemporary church attendance as an exemplification of a Christian nation. Just because we celebrate commercial Christmas doesn't mean that we are a Christian nation. So I'm not arguing this. I come from a Christian conservative mindset. That's how my ideas are informed, but I don't think that's how most Americans have informed themselves, at least not consciously. But somewhere in most people's hearts, they know it's wrong to cut up a baby inside of a womb and suck it out with a vacuum cleaner. That's terrible. And that is yet something that is just being championed. That's sick and twisted. And so that being said, there were many ballot initiatives that were across the country regarding abortion, and most of those succeeded, actually. So what it amounts to is people are, generally okay with killing children in the womb, as long as they don't have to think about it or see it. And we'll come back to that, because there is more work to do for those people that are cheering today because Donald Trump won the presidency, and what that means. We have work to do. And so I'll come back to that in a little bit. I guess a good thing about this today is that I could now go through. I listen to a bunch of podcasts, probably like you do as well, and I get behind, probably like you do as well. And at a certain point, for some of them, particularly the ones that come out every day, I have no idea how or why those people do it that way, but I guess it's their business, and this is more of a hobby for me, so I'm not really worried about that. But weekly is just good. I do get behind on the dailies that come out, and so at a certain point you just go, listen to all, mark all as listened to. Or whatever it's called. Today, I was able to do that for almost all of the shows that I subscribe to, except for the religious ones. And I can tell you that it's a relief. Like, everything that's been said up to this point of the election now doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And so I was relieved to just, mark them all as played, because I just don't need to go back and listen to them. It would irritate me now knowing the results of the election. It is going to be better for foreign policy with Trump in office. It's going to be better for our domestic policy, where we can have common sense approaches to things. Like, we know that boys are boys and girls are girls, and that we know that boys shouldn't play in girls' sports and men shouldn't play in women's sports, and so on. And so we know these things. They're common sense. Like, we have our separate bathrooms for privacy. All of that stuff we know, and people are coming on board with that. That's part of the mistake that the Democrats made. Like, if you decided to handcuff yourself to that particular flag, you are eventually going to get thrown out. And that is what happened in this case. Our economic policy is going to be better, much, much better. And part of that has to do with the Republican desire to remove regulations. Democrats like to put regulations on people, not because they think it's going to make the world a better place. That's what is marketed. But they like to put regulations on businesses so they can control them. They want to be able to say, just, that's a nice house you have over there. It'd be terrible if something happened to it. That is essentially what regulations are. And the government oversight in regulations is a leviathan and pointless and useless. So I look forward to finding out what will happen with our government. Apparently, Elon Musk is going to, wouldn't it be funny if his name was Leon, though? And we just call him Elon the whole time like we're dyslexic. Elon Musk believes that it's possible to cut nearly $2 trillion from the federal budget. So that would be huge. There are so many. And I would just say across the board, you could cut almost everything by half. And what would happen is a lot of people would be out of work. It is not the government's job to keep people employed in the government. That isn't. In fact, the last jobs report came out. Had it not been for federal employment of federal employees, new hires, it would not have been a positive job report at all, because the private sector was slowing way down in its hiring. Why? Because they're waiting for the election, and they're hopeful that Trump can win, because they don't trust the Green New Deal. That's a stupid idea. They don't trust the corporate cronyism that goes on with the crony capitalism that is notorious really in both parties, but the Democrats have perfected it. They're sick and tired of being told what they can do to earn their money. And nobody likes paying taxes. Nobody. And those Trump tax breaks that went into effect in 2018 and will expire in 2025 now will become permanent. That's good news, my friends. And as upset as Democrats get about, the rich not paying their fair share, which is an idiotic sentiment because they never are clear about what the fair share is. It's a stupid trope because they're too lazy and stupid to find the actual answer. And the answer could be, well, it's actually, if you make $80,000, you're fine. But if you make $81,000, we're going to have to tax you pretty heavy. We're going to bring everybody to $80,000. That was an idea not too long ago. And so the idea that the Trump tax cuts benefited the rich more than it benefited the folks who apparently aren't rich. Again, not described, but a breakdown of income levels starting at $30,000 and segments there on upward to over $10 million a year. The greatest benefits came from to the people who were in that $30,000 income to the to the $250,000. And then everything after that, it actually started to go down in joint households. So yes, there was a benefit there was a benefit. And when you make $10 million a year and you save, 1.2%, that's a lot of money. It's a lot more money than the people at the bottom of the spectrum are making. And so that gets twisted up. But here's the funny thing about the Trump tax cuts. They brought in more money. It's so crazy. And I, as just a local guy here, when it comes to taxes, I always find it interesting because, we support a lot of organizations. We're blessed to be able to do so. We enjoy doing that. We feel like it's part of our responsibility, and we get asked. We get asked relentlessly, to be honest with you. And the truth is in most cases, that's fine. But it's the same people who vote a certain way that are asking for that money and then expecting people to be able to provide that money and then get upset when we're like, no, if tax policies change, we're not going to do that. And then they get upset because if there's anything that Democrats are good at, it's counting other people's money. They're not sure how to spend it. They'll spend a lot, but they definitely are good at counting everybody else's money. And it's always somebody else's money. And people are sick and tired about that. So our economic policy, I do believe, is going to get better. And I do believe that Trump is going to do a better job with energy. Here's a place where Doug Burgum could come back and really be useful. If we decide to keep the Department of Energy, which I would be fine with just eliminating, he would be a good secretary for the Department of Energy. And I do believe that it's imperative that we use our fossil fuels in this country to make energy as cheap as possible and America as energy independent as absolutely possible. That's how businesses grow. That's how transportation happens. That's how vacations with families can happen. That's how you reduce the price of food, because a part of that is getting that product from the farm to the store and to the plate. Or the restaurant or wherever it happens to be. So reducing transportation costs, fuel is a huge part of that. And we're good at producing fuel. We're the best, in fact, at producing fuel from fossil fuels in the world. We do it the cleanest way possible. We could drop most of our silly government programs that provide all kinds of corporate welfare and tied to green energy and all of that nonsense. If wind energy is good in it, and I think it has its purpose, it should be able to stand on its own. But it doesn't. It's a grift. If this carbon pipeline that is coming across the state of Iowa is so good and beneficial, it can stand on its own without any government subsidies. But government subsidies and buying back of carbon credits, which are all made up, is what makes that carbon pipeline happen. It's a grift on the taxpayer. It's a ripoff. It's funny money, except it's not that funny. I'm hopeful that those things are dissected. I'm hopeful that people like Elon Musk can come in and just make some big changes. I am happy with the team that has been assembled and look forward to the greater team. We're talking about tens of thousands of government employees. Do we need that many? Probably not. Appointments that from small to large that are going to get down there, find their way to Mar-a-Lago right now as people send in their resumes. I don't know if we need that many government employees at all. I don't know if we need that much federal government property, to be honest with you. I definitely don't think we need very many of these federal government programs. But if you ask a politician or you say you need something from a politician, they'll give it to you, and you are then a slave to them and their party for that vote. That's how it works. That's what they expect. As long as you keep them in power, they'll keep paying for whatever it is that you think that you need. So I'm looking forward to an improvement in the economic policy and the energy policy, and for a new era of true economic development again in the United States. So we'll see what that happens. And part of that is how Trump deals with foreign policy and how he deals with people around the world and how he does make deals. That's what happens. He makes deals and it works pretty well. with the situation in the Middle East, I have no doubt that he'll be able to clean that up very quickly because he doesn't have an interest in pacifying Iran whatsoever. We have no reason to be afraid of Iran. Iran is a bully state, and none of the other Islamic countries in the region are that particularly fond of Iran either, and none of them are that fond of Palestine. So the Palestinians. So there's not going to be much of a problem without any crazy, like you can put an end to that war by simply saying, look, Israel's in charge. And if you don't like that, too bad. And I think that's what Trump will do. So we'll see what happens. There's also a very good chance that Donald Trump's going to spend a lot of money. The Republicans are going to spend a lot of money. Mitch McConnell is still a snake, in my opinion. There are still a lot of people that are in the Republican Party at the top, whether it's at your state or at the federal level, that are grifters, and they're not good. And so there's work to be done. There is a lot of energy and enthusiasm right now from what I would say are the common folk, the same kind of people that they do not like from Madison Avenue and Fifth Avenue. They look down on us in California. The actors and the actresses that tell us that they're supporting Harris and they're so wise. And I'm just like, entertain us, right? What do you know? Basically, Hollywood is just a trailer park, except they get paid more money. And the houses, the trailers are nicer. That's about it. And so it's a group of people that are on the East and the West, and then apparently in Minnesota, and then over in Chicago, that are just looking down on the rest of us. But there's a lot of enthusiasm, and we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with that enthusiasm. So before I talk about what we need to do now, I want to remind you of what it is that we have, what the presidential candidates or all candidates should be doing as they prepare to run for office. There was an episode that I did a couple of months ago, and it was called Proverbs for the President or whatever. And I just want to go through a couple of them, not a lot, because I already did that episode. But I want to say it is better to from Proverbs. Here are some bits of advice now for Donald Trump from chapter 16, verse 8. It's better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. From a wise, and this is 16:23, from a wise mind comes wise speech. The words of the wise are persuasive. And here's the thing that I think is most important for Donald Trump and for the Trump administration now as they transition into power. Commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. Some Proverbs for the new president. I don't think he listens to the show. Be happy to sit down with him for a couple of hours. He doesn't even have to come in. He can just call in if he wants to. But it's important. It's imperative that if we want this Trump train situation to truly make America great again, then I would submit that we must commit our actions to the Lord, and our plans will then succeed. What do we do now? Well, the truth is that if you don't like that people use, if abortion is a problem for you, as it is for me, well, what we have to do is we have to do a better job as people who have a problem with abortion of explaining why we think that's bad in a loving way. We have to get involved and get active. Our churches need to do their darn job. When government took over the social responsibility of caring for the poor, the sick, the needy, for all of those things that the church and religious organizations of all faiths had been doing for centuries, and we let them abscond with that. We just gave up our responsibilities in the same way that at some point in the last 100 years, we decided, hey, it's okay if we put Ma in the home because I'm really busy and I want to enjoy my life. So Ma and Pa got to go in the home and not be a burden on our family instead of having a multi-generational family as God intended. I think that the reason that the big cities vote the way that they do is because they're living in an unnatural environment, stacked one on top of each other with no connection to the business of honest survival. It doesn't have to be a survivalist situation, but like they don't have gardens. They're not raising kids in a natural environment. They can't, they have no elbow room. They're living, next, right on top of each other in apartment buildings. They own nothing. And you're supposed to have a little piece of something. And I've heard the argument that people can't afford to get that piece of something. But I think that, maybe if they didn't have $100,000 of student loans for a college degree they didn't need, like maybe that would be help. But, like if you play the game of life, you can go to college and put yourself $100,000 in debt immediately, or you can go, off to work, and then maybe you'll get lucky and become a doctor. My hope was always become a rock star, because you didn't need a college degree for that, and then you end up being pretty rich. It didn't work out very often in the game of life, or the real game of life. I'm not a rock and roll star. However, I do believe that if the church, if you are a person who believes in God, go to church. And a lot of us don't go to church, so you're not participating in a community of faith at all. I don't like what the pastor says sometimes. I don't like what the Methodists, the Methodist convention decided to vote on last year. I mean, I think it's apostasy. I already talked about that. There's lots of evangelical Protestant churches that have gone way off the rails. But that doesn't mean that you should run away or abandon them, or just sit in your basement or go to the Bedside Baptist Bible Church where you occasionally flip open the Bible. I mean, maybe you do get some, and I think it's healthy for you to get information from other sources, including religious services on YouTube and on the internet, and that. To just be cautious about who you're paying attention to, because there's a lot of very famous folks out there that, in my opinion, are grifters, and they're working for they're not working for Jesus. So, but it's just as easy to go to church. Go to church and then do something with it. Your works won't get you into heaven, but you are expected to stay busy and be useful while you're here. And so, teach your children to go to church. If you want to give them the armor of God, teach them how to be good people. Teach them how to go to church and how to follow in the footsteps as Christ intended. Christ liked kids. He said, "Come unto me like these children do." So what are we doing? And then start providing some of these resources in a better way, and stop in our dumb American brains thinking that the problems we have can only be resolved at some level of government, because they're not. In most cases, and this is not a dig, it's just the truth. In most cases, elected officials, particularly the paid ones, so I'm excusing myself as a school board member because we don't get paid, the paid positions are usually held by the people that, they got nothing else going on. It's not to say that they don't believe in service, because I believe that they do believe in service. And it isn't to say that they don't have good ideas, because some of them have good ideas. And it doesn't mean that that people in government are bad people. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they're not killing it, in the other part of the, job sector. They've got the time and the ability, apparently, and we vote for them. So why would we put our needs in their hands? And they would willingly, and it doesn't matter what party they are, they will willingly take it and say, yeah, we'll take care of that for you. We'll use somebody else's money to solve this problem in a very inefficient way, and then we're going to need more money, and then once the program starts, we can never get rid of it, and then you'll become dependent on it, and then blah, 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 blah. Yeah. We need to stop doing that. Because otherwise we'll never cut any spending. The government will never cut any spending unless we demand it. And right now, there's some traction for that. Donald Trump there's no indication that Trump is going to be a person who is going to spend less money. He spent a lot of money. Until the Biden administration came along, he spent more money than anybody else did. Republicans pretend like they're fiscally conservative, but actually Grover Cleveland was fiscally conservative, and he was a Democrat. And he was also the only one before Trump who had ever gotten elected twice, 2 different periods, to the president of the United States. So maybe Maybe we can be fiscally conservative. That's the only way that it's going to solve this problem. But the only way that we can solve that problem is if you're okay with them saying, okay, we're going to cut your program. And they go, oh, well, I mean, I didn't mean my program. I need that. How about you take it from over there? They don't need that. And that's how you lose every time. We'll lose every single time. So maybe we'll find a team of heroes that will be able to make these things happen, because it won't come all from Donald Trump. In fact, most of it won't come from Donald Trump. So we'll see who he puts together for this team. That's what we got to do now. Go to church so that we ourselves can commit our actions to the Lord, so that our plans, which we pray are his plans, will succeed. Yeah, Donald Trump's going to be the president of the United States of America. How about that? So all of these Trump supporters that are out there, the ones that had the I didn't like this, the explicit signs, the F Joe Biden, I didn't like that stuff. I didn't like that at all. I mean, that is, I don't know what you're voting for. I don't know where you're I don't know what it is that motivates you. But you probably ought to repent for that. And all of the Trump supporters should start to heal the nation by just going to church, taking care of one another. Because the government, whether it's led by Trump, it isn't going to do that for you. And we're going to be right back in the situation. I also think the next 4 years are just going to be another 4 years of stupid chaos, from a cacophony of relentless political enemies on the Democratic side, unless they can change their stripes, which I don't know if that's possible, and a media that only does their job when they're investigating an enemy. So we'll see. It'll be something. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy, actually. I'm pretty happy. I can't deny that it was a very good result for me. And my wife is very happy about it as well. So I should end the show with this. It's a gift. I don't think it was intended as a gift, but we see it as a gift that Donald Trump was elected to be president, that the Republicans have won control of the Senate and probably will the House, but that's not guaranteed. We see that as a gift, for an anniversary gift. Today is our 20th anniversary. My wife and I, Heidi, have been married 20 years. 20 years ago today, we got all dressed up and we met at Advenhagen Recital Hall on Waldorf University campus and had just beautiful weather for November. I think it was in the 70s, believe it or not. It was sunny. It was gorgeous. It was a very small wedding. We had 100 guests total, and it was a beautiful reception. Heidi's an amazing decorator, an amazing planner, and just amazing in so many ways. And boy, if you want to talk about love is patient and love is kind, 100%. The patience that my wife has had with me for 20 years of just the military service, the moving to Sunnyside, the renovations, the raising of kids, my personality being what it is, she's weathered that so well. And I'm just so thankful and so blessed for my wonderful and beautiful and intelligent and incredibly just talented, organized, and also very humble. My wife carries most of the humility in our family, if you can imagine that. It's and she has every reason to be anything but humble, because she's amazing at her work and at her parenting, and just wonderful in so many ways. So it's been 20 years today, and I look forward to the next 20. I'm inspired by my parents who've been married over 50 years, and her parents who have been married well over 50 years, and my grandparents who were married almost 75 years. Do you know how old we'll be if that's the case? So that's what we're trying to do. We're enjoying this time together, and it's been 20 years. So happy anniversary. I hope you have a great rest of your week. I hope that whatever the results are that still have to come in, that they get those resolved. I hope that there isn't an enormous contest. I hope that there isn't a tremendous amount of litigation. I understand that there probably will be in some cases. It is an amazing thing about our nation that we truly can endure peaceful transitions of power for over 200 years, and I mean that. And I know that people bring up January 6th and the insurrection and all of that stuff. I don't think that I can trust what the Democrats know what words mean, since they have problems with other definitions. That wasn't a great day in our history, but it certainly wasn't an insurrection. And the system worked within a couple of hours, and it went right back about the business. And we're lucky. We're lucky to live in a country where we can truly transition peacefully. I know they boarded up businesses in certain parts of the country, expecting riots, and so far I haven't seen that that's the case, and I hope that it isn't, because, and maybe this whole election, if people are wondering how could Harris possibly lose. And, is it Tim Walz's fault? And, all of the things that are going to come out in the next week or so, or 2 weeks or whatever, all of that makes me think, even if there was just a little bit of trickery, a little bit of election interference back in 2020, I don't believe that it was enough to lose Donald Trump the election. But I do believe that I do believe some of it happened, and I think that some of the people that were most invested in that type of nefarious behavior just looked at the candidate in the Democratic Party this time, and they said, it's not worth dying on this hill for this candidate. So maybe in another 4 years, they'll have things figured out where they'll find a candidate that they do want to, register the gravestones for. But in this particular case, I just don't think that there will be much fraud. I don't think that there was much fraud. I don't think, and I don't think that the people that would perpetuate that type of fraud were particularly interested in dying on that hill for this candidate. So we'll see how this whole thing works out. That's the fun part. And we have a short period before the next one. I'll be back on Monday. Until then, I hope you have a great weekend and find a way to be the sunny side of someone else's life. I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of The Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty, and pursuits be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.